that your hand luggage is stowed correctly. Straighten your seat back, secure the table in front of you. Lower your armrest.
In January 2019, me and Mike, we flew to Cabo Verde, or as he likes to call it.
It depends. I like to call it Cape Verde. Americans call it Cape Verde.
But the official Portuguese name and pronunciation is Cabo Verde. And I read an article where the Cabo Verdeans, well, the people that actually come from these islands, they are trying to make sure that people call it correctly Cabo Verde.
So the way we got there was obviously by a plane. This time Adela was the one finding the flights, as usual anyway. And it was Brussels Airlines, right?
Yes, from Brussels to Boa Vista, which is one of the islands of Cabo Verde. And I found these tickets online back in October, I believe, 2018. And we got a really good deal. We paid around
$200? Yeah, about that.
We thought that it would be exciting to go to an island we've never been to.
Yeah, and I've never been to Africa either. So it was a 6-hour-long flight. It was difficult because there was no food.
Yeah, and the flight attendants were not the nicest I've ever met. Yeah.
I believe we didn't even get water.
We got nothing. First of all, I didn't think that Brussels Airlines was a low-cost airline, which it might be, but I just never thought of it that way. And second of all, I thought there was some kind of rule, and there might be, saying that if a flight is longer than some period of time, you have to be offered at least water, but I'm not sure.
This was the first flight that I've ever heard of or been a part of where you could take a layover without deboarding the plane. So they flew over to the island. They stopped in one airport on one island. And then the people that were continuing to the other island just stayed in their seats. And not even 20 minutes after we left the plane, they were already in the air flying to the other island.
The plane flies in a circuit between Brussels, Boa Vista, which is the first island where we were, and Sal, which is another island of the archipelago of Cabo Verde.
I think of 14 islands, right?
I'm not sure, but you might be right.
It is now 12:30 local time, so 2 hours earlier than in Brussels. Please remain seated. Keep your seatbelt fastened until we have...
After we got off the plane, I mean, even before we got off the plane, from the air, it looked like there is nothing really below, just sand, no vegetation, and a road here and there. I still maintained this feeling after we landed.
We landed at a super small airport. It was the smallest airport I've ever seen.
Yeah, me too. We basically just got a taxi and tried to get to our Airbnb.
We gave the taxi driver the name of the house or the name of the Airbnb where we were staying. And so because he didn't know where to go, I showed him the place on a map in the Airbnb application.
And the funny thing is, there are no addresses.
There's just the name of the city, which, I mean, there's one bigger-ish city that resembles a small village in the Czech Republic. With its size, not the way it looks like. And he drove us to the middle of nowhere. There were just a few buildings. There was no road. It was just all dirt. And that's where he dropped us off, right?
Yeah, and we didn't even see the city. It's like he just took us from one point at the desert to another.
Yes. And we got out, we searched around, we were thinking maybe it's somewhere around here, but clearly it wasn't. And then this happened.
And the brother there, but the Casa Pescador is there.
Okay.
Yes, not far away. Right?
We met a local worker minding his own business. We asked him for directions, and he wasn't even that surprised by us because apparently there's enough tourists on this island. And he just told us that he knows the place. He knows the Casa de Pescador. Is it called that?
Yes, Casa de Pescador. Mm-hmm.
And he took us through the whole city, basically, and walked us exactly to the place where we lived. It was quite amazing because it took us maybe 20 minutes to walk there, and he did it for us, which was very nice.
We found out he actually wasn't from Cabo Verde, but from another small state in Africa. And he moved here because he found a job here.
Yeah, I'm working in a hotel, a restaurant, barman in a restaurant.
And he told us a little bit about the island and walked us directly to Casa de Pescador.
Pescador, yes. That's it.
Is it?
I think so.
Sorry, I have to go. Sorry.
Obrigado, man.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Our host was an Italian woman called Francesca.
Ciao.
Piacere Francesca.
Mica.
Piacere, ciao. Hola, tutti e tre. Arrivo agora.
Francesca took us to a beautiful, beautiful apartment located directly in the port, overlooking the ocean and the local fishermen. It was very beautifully decorated in a pirate style, so it was a true Casa de Pescador, or pirate's house, as she calls it on Airbnb.
Because water and electricity is apart.
Okay.
When it's finished the holiday, you pay. Because it's Africa and the water is more expensive. Yes.
Right.
And you think...
The details were breathtaking. In our room with the bed, in our bedroom, we had a wardrobe that was made out of an old boat, I believe.
Yes.
And there were little details that reminded you of boats and fishermen and the life that you live on this island. And what are the odds? But all the tourists living on the island, they probably lived in a hotel nearby. And somehow, every day, they ended up showing under our window, buying souvenirs from local women. It was funny for us because we went to Cabo Verde not to have like a generic vacation, but instead to live more locally. And this was like the best reminder of that.
Yes, we definitely did not experience the typical resort-like hotel type of vacation in Cabo Verde, which is very typical for this part of the world.
Yes.
I found this apartment on Airbnb and I will link it in the show notes.
Considering this was really close to the equator, it wasn't that hot. So every day the temperature got to around 20 to 25 degrees, which is in mid 70s for you Americans. And the bad thing was that it was quite windy and sometimes it felt even colder. So it was almost calling for long sleeves and trousers.
Yeah, since the wind was blowing from the ocean, it was super, super cold.
Yeah, but it wasn't that bad. Like overall, it was much warmer than it would be in Europe.
And sunnier. The sun was amazing.
Yeah, the sun was great. And so we had two activities planned for ourselves. One was a fisherman trip. So our friend would take us to open sea and we would catch our own fish and then eat it on a smaller island nearby, making our own fire. And it would be like a really nice local genuine trip. And then yeah.
And you're missing the best part. The best part was snorkeling.
Oh, snorkeling.
And Mike wasn't even excited about that. I was super excited about snorkeling. And I really did not care about catching my own fish since you might probably know I'm a vegetarian, so I don't even eat fish. But the snorkeling was what I really was looking forward to.
As you might not know, I'm not a big fan of water. Despite working as a lifeguard for 3 summers in a row, I was much more excited about the fish. But despite the excitement that we built up for this trip, this happened.
He canceled on us, so while we were planning it and we were supposed to meet at 9 a.m.
He called us at 9 a.m. and said that he's on a different island and that he can't go.
Now we're faced with the prospect of having nothing much to do because we haven't planned for anything else, right?
Yeah, and it's not really beach weather, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
So we're sitting at a bar, it's 9 a.m. Mike is having a drink. On the other hand, the second big activity that we wanted to do while on this island was quad biking, and that did work out, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that was excellent. That was the highlight of this trip for me.
Okay, so we're riding the quad bike. It's a lot of fun because it can go quite fast.
Especially on those bad roads.
Yes, the roads are quite terrible because...
I mean, there are no roads.
Well, they tried. They're like...
We made a trip throughout the whole island. We visited some of the beautiful spots like the beaches in the southern part of the island. We saw a shipwreck of a Spanish ship that
washed ashore.
For me, the most beautiful part was the Viana Desert.
Mm-hmm.
We actually got stuck in the desert on our quad bike quite a few times. Stop! Stój! Stój! We drove down the dunes and it was pretty scary. Luckily, we both survived this ride and we highly recommend it to everyone who goes to this island.
Other than that, we just relaxed.
Did a little bit of work.
Went to local pubs.
Hola.
Played with children.
I spoke Spanish.
Sí. Ok, ¿está bien? No? Ok, gracias. Obrigado.
I tried to speak Portuguese.
Oh, and so we don't forget the most important activity.
We also played Peter C. Hayward's, yes, the guest of today's episode,
His game called Scuttle. That's the first one he ever released, and he calls it the gateway game.
Takže tohle nemá number.
Ale to je Joker, tam si může dosadit jakýkoliv.
Ale není tam number.
Kdyby byl Joker tady, tak si můžeš sem dosadit jakoukoliv action.
Myslím, že jde.
Já si myslím, že jo.
What would be more fitting for playing a pirate-themed card game than playing it in a pirate house on a tropical island in the middle of the Atlantic?
And the last thing to mention here is that I actually shot a video of our trip. So if you're interested in what Cape Verde looks like, or maybe you want to visit the island, I featured a lot of drone shots in it, so you'll get a nice overview of what to expect. And I put the link in the description, so if you have 3 minutes to spare, go ahead and watch it. Visually, it's probably the most pleasing looking video that I've ever made. I hope you'll like it. There's one more thing we wanted to tell you, Peter.
Talk to you next time.